Welcome to A Sex Worker's Guide to the Galaxy, where the answer to life, the universe, and everything is sex workers. I'm your host, Parker Westwood, and today I'm not bringing you an interview. Today we're going to check in a little bit. I am moving. And as the person who is hosting, editing, queuing, doing all the things for this podcast, I need to take a break during this time, and that is so hard for me to admit. I'm going to be taking the rest of September off, and I will pick back up in October with some new episodes and some incredible interviews. So don't just stop listening. Definitely come back. It's really hard for me to admit when I need to take space. There's this like very dominant culture, like capitalist, white supremacist, patriarchal narrative in my head that's like, just push forward, like just keep going, like don't be weak, and like push through, you can just make it through, like like all this stuff. And it's the same sort of narrative that's like, nothing I do is ever enough. It stems from the same place, and also this like desire for perfection. I guess nothing I do is ever enough is kind of just the desire for perfection, which doesn't exist. And also, like, imperfections are far more interesting, way cooler, wabi-sabi, y'all. It's a thing that is really damaging, and it keeps me separate from my peers because I don't readily ask for help. I don't want to get vulnerable enough to admit that I need a break or some time and just a minute. And so I've been trying to undo these stories inside of myself, to recognize when they're coming up and when I'm acting in them, and to take a step back when I find myself acting in them, and assess what is actually the better move for me. And in this case, I'm taking the month of September away from podcasting, so I can focus on moving to a new state and starting a new chapter in my life. A lot of things are changing. I'm still going to be here as Parker Westwood, still going to show up to the podcast, still a sex worker. But the way I do those things and the way things fit into my life are shifting and changing, which is exciting, because when change happens, we get the opportunity to really look at everything and see how much it means to us and change. I'll say another thing about this like capitalist, white supremacist, patriarchal narratives that are inside of us. We all have them. We're raised in this structure, in this society, and so these things get ingrained in us whether we like it or not. They're there. And so undoing them is a challenge because we have to be able to see them, and the only lenses we've been given are the same ones that like uphold those narratives. So it takes some vision correcting, and it takes some real like introspective work, and it's where a lot of like anti-racist work starts, because if you can't see when you're acting in these things, you're not able to act from like an anti-racist place. You're acting from this place that has been planted in you, this capitalist, white supremacist, patriarchal place. And I say you as in like the collective you, which also includes me. So like I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I find that I used to be so judgmental at the beginning of this journey of anyone who wanted to take a break. I was like, how could you take a break? There's so much work to be done. Like, or I would be like, oh, you're just so privileged enough that you get to take a break. You have the resources to take a break, which is so gross. And I say that here as a way of taking contrary action, because these things do not want to be spoken. Like, I feel super weird about talking about it with you all. But vulnerability is a way of exposing these things for what they are. And I find that this narrative comes from this like scarcity place inside of myself that I don't think there's enough to go around, and I definitely don't think there's enough for me. Whether that be resources or time or love or whatever. And for me to take contrary action in that narrative of like not enoughness, of scarcity, I have to choose to believe in abundance and community and love, and that there's enough for me and that I'm worthy of that. And to prove that I'm worthy, I get to say I am going to take this space for myself. And I encourage you all to do that in whatever capacity you can. Like, even if it's just like, I'm going to take 15 minutes at the end of my day to do a full face routine while your kids are running around, or even leave the party early. Do what you have to do for yourself. I'm going to say, like, even if it's just 15 minutes of like sitting in the bathroom to get some peace and quiet and just breathing. Like, you don't even have to actually do anything. Just allow yourself to be for a moment. Someone I really love in my life said to me once, and I've held it in my being, that we are human beings, not human doings. So to take space for ourselves, we don't have to do anything. We just have to be. And I love that. I also want to touch on this idea that like taking contrary action from those narratives that were placed in us that are capitalist and white supremacist and patriarchal and probably like whorephobic as well. Let's not forget that. And transphobic, all of these things, that to take contrary action against those narratives is to choose to act in a different narrative. One that is a new system that we are dreaming up, that we believe in. And in my case, that like new system that we are building, for me that includes abundance. We have enough resources for everybody. There is enough abundance and community, like relying on our community. We can support one another. We can be vulnerable with one another. We can learn to trust one another again. The structures that be make that really, really hard. And getting vulnerable and learning how to trust other people is scary, but so worthwhile in building this world that we're trying to build. And love, which for me, like all of those things it's a very anti-carceral world that I'm looking to build. So in taking these action steps, even if they're tiny itty bitty and feel super insignificant, we are taking steps toward building a future that we're dreaming up together. And Octavia Butler had this belief and this saying that like activism is science, or science fiction is activism, and activism is science fiction. Like, we are actively dreaming up a new world that could be a new future. So it is therefore a work of science fiction, which I just love that idea. I mean, not only because I'm a Star Trek fanatic, but like I just love that activists are constantly dreaming up new worlds, and that we get to act in that. We get to make our dreams come true, like one small action at a time, or one large action at a time, depending. It's beautiful. And Adrienne Marie Brown writes about this often, and creates works from there. There's a really great book called Octavia's Brood, which I'll throw in the show notes. I loved it. I have it on audiobook, and it is so great to listen to. It makes me so happy to see some of the authors that are in there. The way that it came about was like asking activists to write science fiction, even if they've never written before. They asked activists to write science fiction about like how they see the world. And yeah, Octavia's Brood. Please, please, please read it, enjoy it, take it all in, let it become part of you. It's amazing. Okay. I just went off on a wild tangent. But I didn't want to just leave y'all hanging this week, so I thought I'd spout some things off from my mouth for a while. There's also more Octavia Butler stuff around change. There's this quote that I'm obsessed with, and I have been for a while, that everything you touch, you change. Everything you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. And that's an Octavia Butler quote, and I think it's just so beautiful. And it just reminds me that, like, well, first of all, that change is going to happen no matter what, even at the smallest levels. But, like, we can't avoid change as much as I'm sure many of us would like to. And that in these moments of change, especially these moments of, like, large change, we are closer to the truth of life than or God or higher power or whatever you want to call it, but, like, we're closer to the truth of life and our true essence in these moments of change, because we get to see what truly makes us up in that moment, and like what is true about the world in that moment as everything shifts around us. As long as we can, like, remain grounded in the sometimes chaos of change. I know for me right now, in this change, I'm going through a lot of emotions. Like, I'm experiencing grief at leaving this city that I've lived in for nearly a decade, and like a lot of people that I love who I'm no longer going to have such easy access to and be able to see all the time. I'm also experiencing joy at the chance for this, like, new adventure, and I'm in love, and so that's exciting, and all these incredible things that I get to go do, and that I'm currently in process of doing. And I'm reminded that, like, grief and joy and excitement and nervousness and, like, all of these sometimes seemingly contrary emotions can all live together in the same being. This, like, idea of I contain multitudes, which I'm sure I've said here on the podcast like a million times. That's really important to me, because in change, like, I keep seeking for a narrative to hold on to. And what I keep finding is that there are multiple narratives living all at the same time, and that's okay, that's how life works. And that can be really confusing. It can be so confusing, but if I can relax into that and just accept that there are contrary truths in this world sometimes, and in me sometimes, and just let that be and not try to make sense of it necessarily. If we're making things too simple, turning things into black and white issues, we are missing the point, and we are leaving so many people behind. And I could go on an entire rant about how legislative narrative and, like, political dialogue has become so polarized that we're just leaving so many people behind, and people are vehemently stuck in their position, when we're just, like, not seeing all these people existing in the gray area. We're oversimplifying to make ourselves feel better, and that is not okay. Anyway, I could go on that tangent. I think I just did in a very small way, so I'm just going to leave it there for you. Let's take care of some podcasty stuff. Let's talk podcasts for a minute, huh? I'm going to take this moment just to say that this podcast is brought to you by you all, our lovely Patreon members. And if you are not one but would like to become a Patreon patron or member or whatever I shall call you, you can do that at patreon.com/sexygalaxypod. This podcast is also brought to you by Companion Tax, a tax service for companions or people in the sex industry, and they do a fantastic job. They have done my taxes for the last couple years, and it has been dreamy. So check them out at companiontax.com. You can also support the podcast by leaving a review, giving us 5 stars. Any sort of like interacting with a review type thing on any platform is super helpful. It just helps to bring this podcast to more people's viewers, eyeballs, whatever. My words are not working, but they're peepers, they're eyeballs, to their attention. So do that. That's great. And then, yeah, keep listening. That's another way. Tell your friends. We don't need the internet. Word of mouth is great. But the internet's also wonderful. So just, yeah, tell your friends, let them know, suggest it to people who you think might benefit from listening. And I'm super grateful for everyone who has left an incredible review. I love reading them. Some people are so kind. And I really appreciate that. Yeah, if you want to keep up with the show and let us see what we're up to, we are on Twitter at SexyGalaxyPod, and then I post podcast stuff on my Instagram at Parker.Westwood. So that's that. So we've taken care of all that goodness. And I did want to share with y'all a little bit of, since we're taking a break from interviewing people, I figured I'd fill a little bit of time letting you know some of the analytics. Currently, we are actually super duper close to 23,000 downloads of all time, like from January to now. So 23,000 downloads. To me, that's a lot. I'm like, 23,000 people have this is like of all time, so it's not individual listeners. This is like counting multiple people. Wow, I can't speak today, apparently. It is counting one person listening multiple times. So like one IP address downloading multiple episodes. I'm really excited about that. What I love is that Captivate's where I host this podcast. Love them. If you're looking to host a podcast, Captivate has been nothing but amazing, and I love their analytics feature. They're also not sponsoring this episode. I'm just praising them because I actually like them. I know, maybe I should get paid before I start praising people, but here we are. I really love their analytics feature, and they give you this super cool world map to see who's listening and like what country, and you can kind of zoom in and like go into different regions and see what different regions of what country is listening to you, and it's really fascinating. Obviously, I guess, I don't know if this would be obvious, but I just assumed it would be true, that mostly this podcast is listened to in the United States. But Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, India, Germany, Norway, Hong Kong, like those are all on that first page. And it's super cool to see, like in New Zealand, I've got 18 downloads. This is just in the last 28 days, by the way, these download numbers. There's Spain, Peru, Mexico, Netherlands, Poland, Sweden, Finland, Lithuania, Russia, South Africa. Shout out to all of you. Like there's more. We got Chile, France, Switzerland, Egypt, Greece. Like I am Brazil. Oh my god, I've always wanted to go to Brazil. Take me there, please. Every time I look at this, Estonia, Guatemala, Czechia, I'm just like I can't even tell you. Like my heart is so happy to know that there's people listening all over the place. And you know, they could be bouncing their IP address, but like, I don't even care. It makes me really happy. So I'll take it. If you want to write in, or if you want to talk at some point, if you're a sex worker and you think you've got like a good story to be interviewed for the show and you just want to reach out, or you just want to reach out to say hi because that's cool, go for it. You can email me at sexygalaxypod@gmail.com, and I will do my best to reply in a timely manner. But I'd love to hear from you, and any ideas for the podcast are welcome, especially if you'd like to be interviewed. And so yeah, As far as the analytics go, that's my favorite part. I like looking at the map. I'm a map person. The rest of these analytics are very informative, but I won't bore you with them. I will just let you know that this podcast is doing better than I expected it to, and I love it. And I love sharing sex worker stories with you all. Also, exciting news, there is a podcast page on my website now. So you can go there. It gives a little history about how the podcast came about, why I started it, and it has the playlist there so you can listen to a Spotify playlist or find it on Apple. There's a bunch of links. So that's really exciting. I'm glad I finally got that up. There is no merch page yet or like a place to buy merch. There will be merch. I found somebody who's going to make us some t-shirts, and I'm super excited about it. They are a very good friend of mine. I'm going to be selling that probably on an Etsy store for the moment until I find a way to do some sort of like payment situation on my website, which, as every sex worker knows right now, especially after the OnlyFans fiasco, that's a pain in the ass. So I'm likely just going to be selling stuff on Etsy for a while. But we'll see. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's plenty of resources about what happened with OnlyFans and why having a payment processor on your website and hosting your own content is difficult. So there's that. Anyway, I'm just caffeinated and rambling, and I just didn't want to leave y'all hanging for the month of September and thought we could just have a moment. I'm really proud of this podcast. I'm really proud of everyone who's been on the show. They're all doing such great things. I am proud of you. I don't even really know you that well, but you made it. If you're listening to this, you made it. And you made it to this point, and we're just going forth in this wild world, trying to live a life, just trying to survive capitalism. And if we can do that while experiencing joy, then I think we're doing something right. I kind of want to end it there. I don't know. Okay, fine. Space fact. Okay. Coffee may make you jittery and like overly productive or overly energetic to the point of incapacitation here on Earth. But while you're out in the galaxy, it also makes you impalatable to some of the species that prey on human beings. So, drink up, buttercup. Nanny, motherfuckers.